sessions. And it's also why BlackRock's founder and CEO sits on the boards of the Council on Foreign Relations and the World Economic Forum. No other company in history has had this much global influence. And so surprisingly enough, it was this company that corrupted Netflix. And this was for a reason. But to understand why BlackRock chose to poison Netflix, we first need to look at the power of this company. Because this company is so influential that the Federal Reserve practically begs BlackRock to protect them. And with BlackRock's founder Larry Fink having personal connections with the former Treasury Secretary Timothy Geithner, BlackRock is in control of multiple major banks, with Larry Fink being largely regarded as the most powerful man in America, and quite possibly the world. Which is why BlackRock has been fundamentally ingrained in every aspect of the Western financial system. In the words of Bloomberg, BlackRock is effectively, quote, a fourth branch of government. But what does any of this have to do with Netflix and their content? Well, for several years now, Larry Fink has been obsessed with a company rating system that acts as a proxy woke score called an ESG rating. And this is a very important point to understand. This ESG rating is the key explanation for Netflix's downfall. Here's why. An ESG rating, according to BlackRock, measures a company's exposure to long-term environmental and governance risks. These risks include issues like energy efficiency, worker safety, and board independence, all of which will cause companies to have significant financial consequences if they're not followed properly. And to be honest, if it just stopped there would be no issues here at all, as this is a very good way to rank a company's ability to be a viable long-term investment. However, the issue comes from the social and political rankings this entails. This came to the surface in 2018 when the BlackRock CEO wrote a letter about ESG scores titled, "Contribute to Society or Risk Losing Our Support." In the letter, he stated, quote, "Society is demanding that companies, both public and private, serve a social purpose," which is quite an ironic statement coming from a company with strong financial ties to the Chinese Communist Party. But I've already spoken about this in a previous video. However, this is a very important point to understand, because since BlackRock is a major shareholder in Netflix, their stake significantly impacts Netflix content, as Netflix desperately needs to have a high-ranking ESG score. If they don't have a high ESG score, investors will pull out. And if investors see that BlackRock and a stock predicting machine called Aladdin suggest pulling out of Netflix, then other investors will follow suit. And because Netflix's business runs on major thin margins, having investors pull out of the company would be disastrous for Netflix. So in recent years, with BlackRock being increasingly vocal for certain political and social beliefs, Netflix is now having to toe the party line. Now, to be honest, Netflix can't really do anything about this. I mean, you may think that Netflix can just seek investment dollars from some other firm that doesn't care about being as woke as possible. But Larry Fink has already thought of that. That's why he developed BlackRock's Aladdin service, a management software used by nearly every major investment branch and firm out there.
Aladdin, which stands for Asset, Liability, and Debt and Derivative Investment Network, is practically magical for many reasons. As of today, it is the world's largest asset manager, handling a huge chunk of the world's financial assets. The technology cuts across every asset class and every industry in the world, making it unarguably the most useful piece of tech in financial space.
This Aladdin software coerces institutions to also use the ESG rating system, because if they don't do this, the companies have to go up against the most powerful and entrenched corporation in the world. Companies are financially pressured to increase how woke they are to raise their ESG rating. Otherwise, if it's too low, they will essentially be blocked from the market, which is why pretty much every company in the West pushes the exact same views on every current issue, because none of them would dare cross Larry Fink or any of the other investment managers. You see, none of these businesses actually care about politics at all. All they care about is the approval from investors. And as a result of this, Netflix's content has been adapted to these standards, with the company placing a greater emphasis on being a mouthpiece for social and political talking points. This shift in tone became evident after 2016 when Netflix would start to distribute more content that put a focus on political pandering over competent storytelling, releasing a number of series and films with overt and questionable political talking points, with Netflix creating its own films that were a far cry from beloved series like House of Cards and Narcos. Instead of getting great thought-provoking content, as a Netflix subscriber, you now get Cuties, a 2020 French film that explicitly sexualized young children. The film was about an 11-year-old girl who joins a supposed free-spirited dance crew and defies her family traditions. However, this movie contains numerous scenes of children dancing provocatively towards the audience. But if I talk any more about the subject matter, I'll probably get striked on YouTube. However, this film was so bad that Netflix even got hit with CP charges in a lawsuit coming from a Texas federal court. This case is still currently in progress, but this show is just one of many. Another awful example of Netflix's new releases is titled Sex, Love, and Goop. As you'd probably expect from the title, there isn't really a whole lot of substance in the show. It's really essentially just a sexual instruction manual enacted by Gwyneth Paltrow. This is a high-budget show, but there's no plot, characters, conflicts, or even resolutions. So then why is Netflix focusing on content like this instead of things like House of Cards? I mean, this happened just a few months ago in April 2020, when Netflix released a show called He's Expecting, which might as well be the pinnacle of modern Netflix content. The show is this bizarre, overtly sexual, clumsy, and politically charged narrative about a man who becomes pregnant. Yes, we're talking about a man becoming pregnant. I mean, if you want to know audience's true opinions, just look at IMDb's score of this film. This film is literally about a man facing prejudices because he's supposedly pregnant. So why is Netflix making all this crap content? What do they gain from releasing this kind of content? And why do they always focus on ham-fisted political narratives and borderline pornographic material? I mean, these shows always bomb among users. Just look at the film ratings. No one likes this content. No one's asking for this. So what's the point? Why is Netflix focusing on this? Why are they putting so much money into these shows? I mean, is everyone at Netflix just a bunch of weird creeps who only care about getting their progressive messages across? Well, maybe, but there are some actual reasons why this is happening. It's not just because Netflix as a company is inherently bad. It's not because of some weird creepy executives or because everyone in the company wants to virtue signal for political reasons. It's because they're a modern business, a business that is economically forced to focus on one aspect above all others, and that focus being their ESG score BlackRock assigns them, which is part of the reason why companies like Netflix and Disney are attempting to further raise their ESG scores and have started producing woke content at an unprecedented rate. Because strangely, by doing this makes them get more investments. They don't actually care about the audience watching this content. This is about generating more investments into the company. However, by not focusing on the customer, they're now starting to see the consequences of this. Because this extremely tiring content creates a drought for people looking to enjoy media that's not bombarded with unsubtle political undertones sponsored by multi-billion and trillion-dollar corporations. But then how do we know that ESG benchmarks are more important to Netflix than its content or technological improvements? Well, Netflix puts in the time, money, and effort to publish an ESG inclusivity report annually. And even more telling was that their research department didn't publish a single article for content analytics in the last 2 years, nor for their machine learning from 2019 to 2022. They barely even talked about encoding equality, and at the same time they hid their audience ratings due to lacking performance for their increasingly woke content. And when Netflix does occasionally produce something edgy, original, and entertaining, they always get in big trouble for doing so. For example, when Netflix released Dave Chappelle's comedy special, this had devastating effects for the company's ESG score. According to Ethos ESG, because of Dave Chappelle's special, Netflix Netflix's ESG rating on a statistic called LGBTQ equality dropped to 2.6 out of 100. And for reference, Fox News has a score of 23.4, a score almost 10 times higher than Netflix's. And so you see, this is the sort of out of 100. And for reference, Fox News has a score of 23.4, a score almost 10 times higher than Netflix's. And so you see, this is the sort of pressure that Netflix faces when it produces original edgy content. And so this controversy surrounding Dave Chappelle's special gave us an excellent example of BlackRock's policy in action and how a company's ESG score can be destroyed in an instant. While audiences seem to like Chappelle's material according to the ratings, BlackRock certainly didn't, which is why one of the CEOs of Netflix, Ted Sarandos, issued a company-wide email on October 8th. In the email, he bravely announced that Netflix was proud of the company's partnership with Chappelle, but of course the woke mob at Netflix didn't like this, and so Netflix employees initiated a company-wide walkout to protest the choices made by upper management. However, somehow with all of this pressure, Netflix unexpectedly continued to stand its ground, and the Dave Chappelle special still remains on the platform to this day. And this sentiment has only started to come back at Netflix. Netflix is now actually starting to push away this woke culture. Not very long ago, the company CEO stated, if you find it hard to support our content breadth, Netflix may not be the best place for you. This used to be a very liberal issue, so it's an interesting time that we live in. And again, just a few weeks ago, when Ricky Gervais released a comedy special containing more jokes the media deemed phobic, the Netflix CEO actually stood on the side of the comedian, saying that the only way they can figure out what's acceptable is by, quote, crossing the line every once in a while. He further stated that he thinks it's very important that American culture has freedom of expression, adding that, I always said if we censor in the US, how are we going to defend our content in the Middle East? However, this has only been happening in the last few weeks or so, and this might very well be because of Netflix's recent subscriber loss. By trying to get good ESG rankings, Netflix's company has been in decline, and so the CEO is trying to save the company by saving face in front of the general public, because through producing all this woke rubbish, Netflix lost over 200,000 subscribers in the first quarter of 2022, laying off over 150 employees, with the main cause of this being their stale shows, rising prices, and overt desperate political pandering. In fact, it's got so bad that Netflix is projected to lose another 2 million subscribers during the second quarter, with the stocks plummeting 39%. And now with all the big company contracts that leased major studios' content to Netflix are now expiring, and so with these contracts expiring, competitors are pulling their content from Netflix and entering the market themselves. And these aren't small competitors. These are giant mega corporations creating things like Disney+, Apple TV+, Hulu, HBO Max, Amazon Prime Video, and Paramount+. And due to the sheer number of all these new streaming services, people aren't able to afford subscriptions for every single show they want to watch. So how can Netflix even stand out anymore? How can they get their users back and be the top streaming platform once again? Well, the answer is clear. Stop focusing on trying to please an unpleasable group of losers on Twitter. Stop trying to pander to BlackRock's social credit system. I mean, so far BlackRock's ESG score has been far more damaging for the company than it would have been just ignoring it, because all the consequences of pandering to this ESG score, producing all this terrible unoriginal woke content, has led Netflix to lose billions of dollars. But finally, the Netflix management team seems to be waking up to this. I mean, in fact, Netflix is now purging its most vocal social justice warriors, with Netflix telling its team, if you don't agree with the content on a streaming platform, go work somewhere else. Quote, not everyone will like or agree with everything on our service. The company said in a cultural memo to its employees, while every title is different, we approach them based on the same set of principles. We support the artistic expression of the creators we choose to work with. We program for a diversity of audiences and tastes. We let viewers decide what's appropriate for them, versus having Netflix censor specific artists or voices. As employees, we support the principle that Netflix offers a diversity of stories, even if we find some titles counter to our own personal values. Depending on your role, you may need to work on titles you perceive to be harmful, the company added. If you find it hard to support our content breadth, Netflix may not be the best place for you, which might be the turning point in Netflix. This could indicate a new rise of the company. However, this slow, painful death for Netflix may just be inevitable, mostly due to their culture and company being infested with workers and investors who see the company as a means of preaching social change rather than entertainment. But if Netflix can't change its content soon enough, the company quite clearly doesn't have long left.
It's 9:15 in the morning of April 14th, 1988. This man enters a tech store desperate to buy servers. He needed 8 servers and fast.
I need 8 of them fast.
Servers were a thing that any entrepreneur had to buy. There was no platform as a service, no AWS. You had to build your own servers.
CNN, once the most trusted name in news, is now crumbling into the ground, with CNN recording a 90% decline in viewership in just 1 year. This was highlighted back in January. On January 3rd, 2021, CNN recorded 2.7 million viewers for the week. On January 3rd, 2022, this number was 548,000. And in this last week of June 20th, 2022, CNN recorded their lowest ratings in 22 years, averaging a tiny 56,000 viewers, causing CNN to lay off its CEO, Jeff Zucker. This is in conjunction with CNN's catastrophic failure with CNN+, a subscription model set to rival Netflix, with over $300 million in funding, going on to gain only a measly 10,000 subscribers, causing the service to be shut down in just 3 weeks. It's clear to everyone that CNN is seeing its final days, and for most, this won't be a surprise. Then what caused CNN to go from being the most trusted name in news, with a first-class reputation and millions of viewers, to now scraping the barrel for views with a god-awful reputation? Well, in this video, we're going to go over the certain actions CNN took, which ended up destroying the company entirely, and it all started back with the CNN founder, Ted Turner. Although Ted Turner may be a massive name in the TV industry today, this wasn't always the case. Ted wasn't always destined to control the mainstream media, because simply put, Ted's path in life didn't always seem to be on the right track. Back in his early 20s, he was expelled from his university after he brought a girl back to his dorm room.